Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be tackling a pretty big topic, the
Yeah.
future of social media.
Huge.
And we've got a really interesting mix of sources for this one.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got articles from industry magazines. We've got some
Yeah.
YouTube videos, even a
Mhm.
couple of kind of personal stories about people trying to, you know, make a living in this whole social media world.
Oh, wow.
So are you ready to kind of unpack all of this with us and figure out what it all means for you, the listener?
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive in. It's changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Social media, it's not just about posting vacation pictures anymore.
Yeah.
It's reshaping how we get our news, how companies do advertising,
Mhm.
and even, what jobs might look like in the very near future.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to talk about this stat that totally jumped out at me from this technology magazine article.
Okay.
Almost 5 billion people worldwide are using social media.
Wow.
That's what, more than half the planet
That's wild.
scrolling through their feeds.
It
What
is.
what jumps out at you about that number?
I I think what's really striking to me is how fast this all happened.
Yeah.
Social media went from this kind of niche thing
Wait.
to being practically everywhere in just a few years.
Mhm.
And that means it's not just shaping our individual lives anymore.
Right.
It's impacting global communication business,
Yeah.
even politics. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings us to our first big question here.
Okay.
What is the future of social media? Where do we even begin with that?
Well, one thing that's definitely clear is its growing influence on journalism and marketing.
Hmm.
Think about it. How many of you listening right now, how many of you get your news from social media these days?
Yeah.
And be honest, how many times have you bought something after seeing an ad or an influencer talking about it online?
Oh, all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of our lives.
It is. And speaking of jobs, we've got a source here called Paying Social Media Jobs.
Mhm.
And it basically says that a lot of people are seeing this as their ticket to a whole new career.
Interesting.
But is it
Yeah.
really a viable option?
That's a question we'll definitely dive into more.
Okay.
Um, there's certainly a demand for social media skills,
Right.
but the competition is fierce.
Yeah.
Those freelance platforms are flooded with people who know the basics.
Hmm.
To really stand out, you need specialized skills, a strong personal brand.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as those get rich quick gurus make it seem.
Right. Okay. So let's put a pin in that career discussion for a
Yeah.
minute and tackle another hot topic that came up in our research.
Okay.
Social media bans.
Ooh.
We've got this article here about Australia planning to ban social media for kids under 16.
Wow.
And other countries are actually considering similar moves.
Interesting.
So what's the deal with that?
Well, it's a complicated issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got governments who are concerned about the impact of social media on young people. Right.
Especially on, mental health and data privacy.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got folks arguing that it's kind of an overreach by the government,
Right.
that it limits freedom of expression,
Yeah.
and that maybe it won't even be effective.
Yeah.
Kids will find ways to get online anyway.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly.
So is banning social media really the answer?
That's the $1 million question. And honestly, there's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It's something we'll definitely explore further in this deep dive,
Okay.
looking at both sides of the argument for sure.
All right. And speaking of complicated, let's circle back to that career question for a sec.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of you are probably wondering, is social media really a good career choice in 2025?
Right.
Especially with all this talk about bans and algorithms changing faster than I can even keep up with.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And to be honest, the answer is not simple.
It really depends on your skills, your interests, and how much work you're willing to put in.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll dig into all of that.
Okay.
We'll break down what it actually takes to build a sustainable career in social media and what that career landscape might look like a few years from now.
Okay, so far we've got the future of social media itself, its impact on things like journalism and marketing,
Mm-hmm.
the social media ban debate,
Mm-hmm.
A&D, whether it's a viable career path.
Yeah.
What else is on our agenda for this deep dive?
Well, since it's 2025 and,
Yeah.
and folks are thinking about their career paths,
Yeah.
we should definitely look at the skills and strategies that'll be most valuable in this, evolving landscape.
Okay.
Things like content creation, data analytics,
Mm-hmm.
understanding algorithms, even knowing how to navigate those ethical gray areas that pop up online.
Ooh, that's a good one. Ethics in the digital age. That's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
But before we get too deep into that,
Uh-huh.
I want to hear from you. Like, what are you most curious about when it comes to the future of social media?
Yeah.
Drop your questions in the comments, and we'll try to tackle as many as we can.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you. Before we jump into those listener questions, there's one aspect of social media's future that we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay, what's that?
The battle between short form and long form content.
Ooh, yeah, it's like TikTok versus YouTube.
Exactly.
Like those quick hits of entertainment versus the deep dives and the documentaries.
Yeah, and we actually came across two YouTube videos that highlight this perfectly.
Oh, cool.
One is by this guy, Raj Shamani. He's this high-energy guy who's all about short-form content.
Okay.
And he argues that it's like the only way to grab attention in today's world.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a point, right? Like, our attention spans are shrinking by the minute.
That's what he says. Yeah. He says short-form content cuts through the noise. It's designed for quick consumption. Perfect for those scroll-and-go moments.
Yeah, makes sense.
But then you have the other video from
Right.
Simon Alexander Ong.
Yeah, his whole vibe is totally different.
Completely. Ong is all about long-form,
Right.
thought-provoking content.
Yeah.
He believes it allows for deeper understanding, nuanced storytelling, and a genuine connection with the audience.
It's like comparing like a quick snack to like a gourmet meal.
Yeah.
They both have their place,
Right.
but it just depends what you're looking for.
I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it raises a really interesting question for you, the listener. What kind of content are you drawn to?
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about a career in social media, what format feels the most aligned with your goals?
That's something to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's tackle some of those listener questions now.
Okay, sounds good.
A lot of you are curious about those social media bans.
Yeah.
Especially the one in Australia for kids under 16. So what are the potential implications of that?
Well, for starters, it could set a precedent for other countries. If Australia sees some positive results, like a decrease in cyberbullying or mental health issues,
Right.
other governments might be tempted to follow suit.
But wouldn't that be a bit like playing whack-a-mole? I mean, kids are resourceful. They'll find ways to get online, right?
That's a valid point. And that's why some people argue that instead of outright bans, we need to focus on better education,
Okay.
digital literacy, and maybe even redesigning social media platforms to be safer for young people.
So like teaching kids how to be responsible digital citizens
Exactly.
instead of just cutting them off completely.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Right.
And it's one that's going to be debated for years to come.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of debate, let's move on to another question that's been popping up a lot.
Okay.
Is social media a good career choice in 2025?
Honestly, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
On one hand, there's definitely a growing demand for social media skills.
Mm-hmm.
Companies need people who can manage their online presence, create engaging content, run ads, analyze data.
It's like a whole new set of job titles that didn't even exist a few years ago.
Exactly. But here's the catch.
Right.
It's also a super competitive landscape.
Yeah.
Everyone and their grandma seems to be offering social media services these days.
So how do you stand out from the crowd? Like, what skills are really in demand?
That's where it gets interesting. While basic social media knowledge is important, the real money is in specialized skills.
Yeah.
Think data analytics, paid advertising content strategy,
Mm-hmm.
even things like community management and influencer marketing.
So it's not just about posting pretty pictures and writing witty captions.
Not anymore. You need a deeper understanding of how these platforms work,
Mhm.
how to reach the right audience, and how to measure your results.
It sounds like a lot to learn. Where do you even begin?
There are tons of online courses, certifications, even university programs now
Wow.
that focus specifically on social media marketing and digital strategy.
So it's like any other career path.
Mm-hmm.
You need to invest in your education and continuously update your skills.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important point.
Okay.
In 2025, the social media landscape is going to be all about adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
Algorithms change constantly.
Mm-hmm.
New platforms pop up overnight. Trends come and go in the blink of an eye.
It's like trying to hit a moving target. How do you stay ahead of the curve?
By being a lifelong learner,
Okay.
embrace new technologies, experiment with different approaches, analyze your results, and never stop learning.
It sounds like a recipe for success in any field, really.
Absolutely. The skills you develop in social media, adaptability, creativity, problem-solving, communication,
Yeah.
those are valuable no matter what career path you choose.
That's okay. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the impact of bans,
Hmm.
the skills needed to succeed, and the importance of staying adaptable.
Right.
But let's get down to brass tacks. What does the actual career landscape look like in 2025? Like, what jobs are out there?
Well, we're seeing a huge demand for social media managers, of course.
Mm.
These are the folks who handle a company's overall social media strategy,
Right.
creating content managing communities, running ads, analyzing data.
So they're like the conductors of the social media orchestra.
Exactly. Then you've got content creators,
Right.
the folks who are actually producing the videos, the photos, the written content
Mhm.
that keeps people engaged.
And that could be anything from like funny TikToks to informative YouTube videos to beautifully curated Instagram feeds.
Exactly. And then there are more specialized roles,
Okay.
like social media analysts,
Mm.
who dive deep into data to understand audience behavior and campaign performance.
So they're like the number crunchers,
Mm.
the ones who make sense of all those likes, shares, and comments.
Precisely. And let's not forget about community managers,
Yeah.
who are the front line of communication with followers, responding to messages, fostering engagement, and building relationships.
It sounds like a team effort. You need all these different skills and roles to make a successful social media operation.
Absolutely. And that's why a lot of companies are building in-house teams
Okay.
with specialists in each area.
But what about those of us who are thinking about freelancing or starting our own businesses?
Yeah,
Is there room for that in this landscape?
absolutely. In fact, we're seeing a growing trend towards entrepreneurship in the social media space.
So people are building their own brands, offering specialized services, and becoming their own bosses.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is you can leverage your social media skills
Right.
to market your business and reach a global audience.
It sounds like there are a ton of possibilities.
There are.
But with all this competition, how do you make sure you're not just another face in the crowd?
That's where personal branding comes in. You need to figure out what makes you unique,
Okay.
what value you offer, and how to communicate that effectively to your target audience.
It's like creating your own personal elevator pitch for the digital age.
Exactly. And that's something we can dive deeper into in our next segment.
Sounds good. But before we do that, I want to give a shout out to all of you who've been submitting questions.
Yes.
We're loving the engagement.
Yes.
Keep those questions coming. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube and Facebook channels
Yes, please do.
so you don't miss the rest of this deep dive. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the future of social media. And before we wrap things up, let's explore this idea of personal branding.
Yes.
It's come up a few times already, and a lot of you have questions about what it actually means and why it's so important in 2025.
Yeah, it's essential, really, especially if you're considering a career in this field. Think of your personal brand as your online reputation. It's what sets you apart from the competition and helps you attract the right opportunities.
So it's not just about having like a catchy username and a profile picture with good lighting.
No, it's more than that. It's about showcasing your skills, your experience, your values, and your unique perspective. It's about creating a consistent online presence that reflects who you are and what you stand for.
Okay, so how do you actually DO that? Where do you even begin?
We'll start by identifying your niche. What are you passionate about? What are you good at? What problems can you solve for others?
So like if I'm obsessed with baking and I'm really good at creating those like mouth-watering recipe videos,
Yeah,
my niche could be helping people learn how to bake delicious treats from scratch.
exactly. Once you've identified your niche, you need to build a strong online presence.
Okay.
That means having a professional website, active social media accounts, and creating high-quality content that showcases your skills.
So it's not just about being on social media. It's about using it strategically to build your brand.
Precisely. Think about your target audience. Who are you trying to reach? What kind of content will resonate with them?
And how do you make sure your content actually gets seen by the right people? My algorithms are a mystery to me.
That's where understanding social media strategy comes in.
Okay.
You need to know how to optimize your content for each platform, use relevant keywords, engage with your followers, and even run targeted ads if necessary.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It is. Building a personal brand takes time and effort,
Yeah.
but it's worth it, especially if you're serious about building a career in social media.
Okay, so we've talked about personal branding and some of the key skills you need to succeed in this space.
Hmm.
But before we wrap up, I want to address one last question that's been weighing on my mind.
Okay, what's that?
With all this talk about algorithms, data privacy concerns, and even social media bans,
Yeah.
does the future of social media feel a little dystopian?
Mm.
Like, are we heading towards a world where our lives are completely controlled by these platforms?
It's a valid concern, and honestly, the future of social media is uncertain, but I believe it's up to us to shape that future. We need to be mindful of how we use these platforms, demand greater transparency and accountability from social media companies, and continue to have open and honest conversations about the ethical implications of this technology.
So it's not just about adapting to the changes, it's about actively shaping those changes for the better.
Exactly. We have the power to influence the direction of social media. We can choose to use it to connect with others, share our stories, build communities, and make a positive impact on the world.
That's a much more optimistic outlook. And it reminds us that even in the face of uncertainty, we still have agency. We still have a voice.
Absolutely. The future of social media is not predetermined. It's a work in progress,
Mhm.
and we're all part of that process.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. What role do you want to play in shaping the future of social media? What kind of digital world do you want to create?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. And remember, even small actions can make a difference. Being mindful of your own social media, use supporting creators who align with your values, engaging in thoughtful conversations. Those are all ways to contribute to a more positive and ethical digital landscape.
Well said.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the future of social media. It's been a fascinating conversation, and we hope you've learned something new.
We've certainly enjoyed exploring this topic with you.
Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook channels for more deep dives into the topics that matter most to you. We're always looking for new ideas, so feel free to share your suggestions in the comments below.
We love hearing from you.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring the ever-evolving world of social media.